Hello and welcome back to the Daily Bible Reading Show. I'm picking up from Genesis chapter 18, in which verse? Verse 22. So the men turned from there and went towards Sodom, but Abraham still stood before the Lord. Then Abraham drew near and said, "Will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you then sweep away the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous who are in it? Far be it from you to do such a thing, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. Far be that from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just?" And by the way, I think that's kind of like the theme verse, shall not the judge of the earth, God, do what is right, do what is just. So just worth remembering that. Verse 26, and the Lord said, "If I find at Sodom 50 righteous in the city, I will spare the whole place for their sake." Okay, now let's press on. Verse 27, Abraham answered and said, "Behold, I've undertaken to speak to the Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. Suppose 5 of the 50 righteous are lacking, will you destroy the whole city for lack of 5? And he said, "I will not destroy it if I find 45 there." Again, he spoke to him and said, "Suppose 40 are there." 40. He answered, "For the sake of 40, I will not do it." Then he said, "Oh, let the Lord not be angry, and I will speak. Suppose 30 are found there." He answered, "I will not do it if I find 30 there." He said, "Behold, I've undertaken to speak to the Lord. Suppose 20 are found there, 20. He answered, "For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it." So going lower and lower and lower. Then he said, "Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak again, but this once, last time. Suppose 10 are found there." He answered, God answered, "For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it." And the Lord went his way when he had finished speaking to Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. End. So, what do we see here? I think we see Abraham bargaining with God. Like at the Pasar Malam, I guess, night market. Here in Asia, we have these night markets, and they have their stuff on the tables, and you're not just meant to pay the price on the tag. You're meant to bargain, you're meant to haggle, you're meant to get the lowest price possible. And there's kind of satisfaction that comes with that. Hey, I got this at such a good price. And it seems as if Abraham's doing that with God. He's trying to lower the number from 50 to 45. He's trying to get the lowest number. And here is where it gets interesting. The lowest number of righteous people who will offset the unrighteousness of offset the unrighteousness of everyone else. And so he's bargaining. He is, you could say, praying before God. That's what we do sometimes when we bargain with God, right? We want something, and you say, "God, if I do this thing, will you do that thing for me?" Kind of like an exchange. And it might be interesting to think if our prayers are like that, might not be wrong, but might not be right either. But I think it's just that it's instinctive, that you're asking for something in exchange for something else. But I think the moment you have that, that kind of bargaining and that kind of desperation, I think you want something. I think this is where you start to see the differences between Abraham and us. Well, for one thing, Abraham is not asking for something for himself, but rather God is about to destroy Sodom. And so Abraham is coming to ask on behalf of Sodom, on behalf of someone else, their salvation, their forgiveness, their blessing. So Abraham is asking God on behalf of these people and he's acting like a priest. He is in the middle. So God, Abraham, and he's in the middle. Kind of like a middleman, kind of like a priest, kind of like an intermediary. Middleman. And so that's why you see Abraham taking this kind of posture before God. So let's look at it again, verse 22. The man turned from there, went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood still before God, like a face off. Abraham has something to say before God. And even though the other two representatives, the two angels, have left, gone down to Sodom, Abraham maybe even stands in the way of God. He almost has this kind of boldness in approaching God. He says, verse 23, Abraham drew near to God. And I guess that's what you need as a priest. You need that thick skin, as you say in Chinese. You can't be shy. You have to actually go up to God, and you have to argue for something. You have to be very, very bold. And that's what Abraham does. And I guess if you are Sodom, that's what you want, right? In a lawyer, in a priest, you want someone who's really able to get in God's face, even for your sake, and really empathize with you and plead for you, and really almost, really bother God with their prayers. So that's one thing. Abraham is interceding on behalf of these other people. But the other thing is that Abraham is bargaining with God's righteousness. That's just where you get the key verse, I think, shall not the judge of all the earth do what is just? And it says, you are the judge. You are God. You should do the right thing. And so when he uses this measure of 50 righteous, 40 righteous, essentially the righteousness that he's talking about is not these men's righteousness, but God's righteousness in not judging them together with the unrighteous. Does that make sense? Well, rather God to be fair in not letting them die together with the unrighteous. And so he's actually bargaining in terms of God's righteousness. How merciful will he be towards the minimum number of people who are innocent? So let's look at it again. Okay. So verse 23, Abraham drew near to God. So again, that boldness. And he says, will you indeed sweep away the righteous with the wicked? And this phrase sweep away happens a few times. The idea of like just wiping everything away. And you're wiping everything away. That means the good thing as well as the bad thing. God is about to wipe away the unrighteous, the wicked in Sodom. And he's right to do this. Sodom has done evil. Sodom has ignored God, and God's about to judge them. But Abraham's argument is, will you do this also to those who aren't like Sodom? The righteous together with the wicked. So will you just sweep them away? Not have a distinction, not have a discernment when it comes to identifying those who don't deserve the judgment. And that's why I keep saying, far be it from you, far be it from you. It's like saying to God, you wouldn't want to do this, would you? Yeah. And I guess this is a reflection of how well Abraham knows God. Abraham knows that God is someone who is utterly just. The whole sense of right or wrong, whole sense of holiness, the whole sense of justice, it comes from God. God put it in us. And God is the one who instilled in us this sense of morality, of rightness, of fairness. And I wonder if that's why this passage is in the Bible. God has maybe even intentionally put Abraham in this priestly role. Earlier on, and we saw this in our previous reading, God kind of said, shall I tell Abraham? Shall I let me know what I'm about to do? And now we know why. God let Abraham know of his judgment so that Abraham will argue for God's justice. So again, God lets us know of the terrible things to come, of the judgment that is rightfully falling on those who have sinned against him and rebelled against him. Not so that we will join in that judgment per se, but so that we will embody God's heart in crying out for salvation, for forgiveness, for mercy. And I think that's what Abraham is doing here. But he does it in a very interesting way. Again, he argues for God's justice. Will you really do this thing and allow innocent people to suffer? And what he does is he says stuff like, far be it from you, verse 25, to put the righteous to death with the wicked, so that the righteous fare as the wicked. As if to say that there must be a distinction. For you to judge the wicked, it must mean that you must also, what's the opposite of judge? Spare the righteous, I guess. Yeah, you can't just punish, and call yourself just, if that punishment also falls on those who don't deserve that punishment. I think that's what he's saying. And so he comes up with this hypothetical scenario. He says, suppose there are 50 righteous, verse 24, and then 45, verse 27, and then it goes down to 40, verse 29, and you got the other 30, 20, and 10. And here we're looking at the minimum number. You get the idea that even when it starts with 50 righteous, they're not the majority. You're not looking at a city whereby most of them are trying to do the best that they can. If anything, intuitively, we don't know this for sure, 50 is probably a minority. I'm filming this in college, but this college is on top of a shopping complex, and I think it's quite a popular shopping complex. I think there are maybe like 2,000 people here on a Sunday. And maybe, imagine God's about to pour a judgment on everyone here. And you say to God, hey, maybe if there are 50 people here who don't deserve that judgment. So 50 out of 2,000, it's a small number. But then you go lower and lower and lower. And what do we learn from this? I think the encouraging thing that I see from this is that you don't need to be the majority to make a huge difference to everyone. You just need to be the minority that's faithful. It's very counterintuitive, right? Sometimes in this age of influence, you're trying to get the numbers. In this age of maybe even evangelism, you're trying to get everyone evangelized. And that's a noble thing. That's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But here it's saying, actually, it's important that those who are righteous, those who trust in God, remain so. And if you are, God is willing to offset the unrighteousness of others based on yours. That's worth thinking about, isn't it? Sometimes you're so busy trying to get everyone on board, but here Abraham's saying, based on just these few, God is willing to forgive. And that's an amazing realization for me, at least. Maybe what it needs, what Malaysia needs, what our country needs, what our culture needs, is maybe just for the few of us who are faithful to stay faithful, to hold on to God's righteousness, to remain prayerful for everyone else. And maybe God will use that as the basis of then, transforming and redeeming and maybe even saving everyone else. It'd be interesting, isn't it? Yeah, that if a church of, say, 50 people were able to result in the salvation of an entire city. And even less than that, 50, again, 45, 40, 30, and so on. So yeah, that's really one big takeaway point, I guess. Not having to have that pressure to get everyone on board. But maybe then again, how difficult it is just to find that small minority. Abraham has to argue lower and lower and lower because I think it shows that maybe it's very rare. Maybe it's actually really difficult even to find 50 people who are righteous, who are innocent, who are deserving of God's salvation in a huge city or even like a mall like Lot 10. And maybe that's why he lowers down the numbers 50, 45, 40, and 30. And here, I'm about to end, but here the interesting thing is, why does he stop at 10? He says, let me speak but once, verse 32. This is my last best price. This is the last time I'm going to bother you, God. 10. Just 10. Just 10 people. And God says yes to 10. And there's a part of me, and I'm sure you, if you read this, that goes, why not 5? Or why not even 1? Why not 1? And yeah, I guess we'll never know. Yeah, Abraham, why do you stop at 10? Are you so pessimistic about the number of believers, the number of righteous people, the number of innocent people in that city? Yeah. Or maybe it's just realistic. I think that could be it. Maybe it's realistic that maybe even 10 is hard to come by. And if so, why not argue for 1? Why not really push God to the edge? Just one person who is righteous. And here again, it doesn't say so, but we know from the context, we know from reading Genesis that actually there is one person that Abraham knows at least who lives in Sodom that could be, labeled as righteous, his nephew Lot. The last time we saw him went down to Sodom is actually going to be featured in the next chapter. The 2 angels are going to meet Lot and they're going to save him. But why doesn't Abraham say, why not 1? And this is kind of like a theory. I'm not quite sure if this is correct or not, but my working theory is that Abraham is thinking about his nephew Lot. And maybe that's why he's arguing for Sodom at all. Why would he, so boldly intercede for this whole city if he isn't in it? Abraham's not going to suffer judgment. Why is he interceding with God? But I think because he knows at the back of his mind, Lot is there. He knows that Lot might be swept up together in this judgment. And I think that's why he's interceding for him. But also, I think Abraham knows that Lot, being that one person in this city, maybe he doesn't qualify as righteous. Maybe even Lot, his own nephew, even that one righteousness isn't righteous enough. And I think the realization that dawns on Abraham at this point, again, it's just my theory, is that no one is righteous. That's not even one person. Don't say in Sodom, maybe even here in Lot 10, maybe here in the whole of Malaysia, there's not one person who is righteous. Otherwise, you could use that as the basis for forgiveness and salvation and mercy for everyone else. I guess that's the kind of like wake-up call for us that maybe we aren't as good as we think we are. Good news is that, there is Jesus. And I think the amazing thing about the gospel is that, Jesus Christ isn't just the one righteous person who doesn't deserve to be judged, but that he was judged. He wasn't just the one innocent person who could then cover everyone else with his innocence and his justice and his goodness, but that Jesus took our judgment of the entire world upon himself. And that's how we receive forgiveness and blessing and mercy. It's actually him doing the ultimate exchange, that one righteous person takes upon himself all the judgment of the world. And because of that, we are free. Because of that, we are forgiven. I'm going to end. I'm not sure whether it is audible, but thanks for listening. This has been Genesis chapter 18. The last bit. I hope it's encouraging, and I hope it's just been a wake-up call to what it means to transform the nation, to transform the culture. I don't think we'll ever be able to reach a majority. We'll be able to transform everyone, but it is encouraging that you only need that minority, and even so, even if you don't have that minority, you only need Jesus. And because of his righteousness, and because of his death on the cross, taking our judgment upon himself, we can be considered righteous in God's eyes. Yeah. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much that we don't have to do this bargaining thing. It's already been done for us on the cross. Because the one righteous one was judged, because the one innocent one was forsaken, we now receive from him your love, your acceptance, and your life through him. We thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.